Hello friends, myself Archana Mughal from KTHM College Nasik, Department of Computer Science. Now, I am going to teach a paper or a course Cyber Security. Now, today we will start our third module, that is Information and Network Security. And in that we will discuss chapter 1, that is Access Control and Intrusion Detection. Now we will start our first topic, that is identification and authorization. In that we will see first topic is identification. Identification is the initial phases of the process of following access to a system, process of ascribing a user identifier to a human being or to another computer or a network component. And what third point is that what happens when you profess to have a certain identity in the system, and fourth point is can be provided by the user use of username or account number, etc. Identification is nothing more than claiming you are somebody. You identify yourself when you speak to someone on the phone that you don't know and they ask you who they are speaking to. When you say I am a Jason, you have just identified yourself. In the information security world, this is analogous to entering a username. It's not analogous to entering a password. Entering a password is a method for verifying that you are who you identified yourself as. And that's the next one on our list. Identification is the act of indicating a person or a thing's identity. Now for a greater simplicity, let us use an example. Let's say a user wants to log into their Google account, and Google works well as an example because its login process is neatly broken into several basic steps. Here is what it looks like. First step, we will see the first step, that is the system asks for a login and the user enters one and the system recognizes it as a real login, and this is the identification. Next topic is authentication. This is also initial phase of process of allowing access to a system. The process of validating an identity provided to a system. Then what happens when the system determines that you are who you claim to be. And authentication involves two-step processes, entering the public information, that means identification, and then entering the private information. Authentication is the act of proving the identity of a computer system user. For example, by comparing the password entered with the password stored in the database. Authentication is how one proves that they are who they say they are. When you claim to be Jane Smith by logging into your computer system as a J Smith, it's most likely going to ask you for a password. You have claimed to be that person by entering the name into the username field. That's the identification part. But now you have to prove that you are really that person. Most systems use a password for this, which is based on something you know, that is a secret between you and the system. Now we already see the example for identification. Then identification is the first step. First step is the system asks for login and the user enters one and the system recognizes it as a real login, and this is the identification. Next, second step is the authentication. In that, Google then asks for a password. The user provides it, and if the password entered matches the password stored, then the system agrees that the user indeed seems to be real, and this is the authentication. Now we we are going to see next topic is user authentication. User authentication is a security process and that covers all of the human to computer interactions that require the user to register and log in. And said more simply, authentication asks each user who are you and verifies that their response. When a user registers for an account, they must create a unique ID and key that will allow them to access their account later on. Generally, a username and a password are used as the ID and key, but the credentials can include other forms of key as well. Essentially, the user authentication process is what provides users repeat access to their own accounts while attempting to block any unauthenticated users from gaining access. This means that user A can log into their own account while user B would be denied access. Conversely, user B could access their own account while user A would be unable to. To put simply, user authentication has a three tasks. Manage the connection between the human and the websites. Human means user and the website servers means computer. Second is a verify users identities, and third is approve or decline the authentication so the system can move to authorizing the user. The process is fairly simple. Users input their credentials on the website login form. That information is then sent to the authentication server where the information is compared with all the users' credentials on a file. When a match is found, the system will authenticate users and grant them access to their account. If a match isn't found, users will prompted to re-enter their credentials and try again. After several unsuccessful attempts, the account may be flagged for suspicious activity or require alternative authentication methods such as a password reset or one-time password, etc. When your user authentication isn't secure, however, cyber criminals can hack the system and gain access, taking whatever information the user is authorized to access. So, user authentication is important. Next is means of user authentication. There are four general means of authenticating a user's identity which can be used alone or in a combination. First one is something the individual knows. Examples include a password, personal identification number that is PIN number or answers to a pre-arranged set of questions. Next is something the individual possesses means example in that include electronic key cards, smart cards, physical keys, and this type of authenticator is referred to as a token. Then third one is something is individual is means static biometrics. Examples include in that recognition by a fingerprint, face recognition, retina recognition, etc. Then fourth one is something the individual does means dynamic biometrics. In that examples in that include recognition by voice pattern, handwriting characteristics, and typing rhythm. All of these methods properly implemented and used can provide secure user authentication. However, each method has a problems. An adversary may be able to guess or steal a password. Similarly, an adversary may be able to steal a token. A user may forget a password or lose a token. Further, there is a significant administrative overhead for managing the password and token information on systems and securing such information on system. With respect to biometric authenticators, there are variety of problems including dealing with the false positives and false negatives, user acceptance, cost and convenience. Next topic is authentication protocols. An authentication protocol is a type of computer communications protocol or cryptographic protocol specifically designed for transfer of authentication data between two entities. It allows the receiving entity to authenticate to connecting entity. The example, client connecting to a server as well as authenticate itself to the connecting entity means server to client by declaring the type of information needed for authentication as well as the syntax, and it is the most important layer for a protection needed for a secure communication within the computer networks. An important application area is that of mutual authentication protocols. Such protocols enable communicating parties to satisfy themselves mutually about each other's identity and to exchange the session keys. There, the focus was key distribution. We return to this topic here to consider the wider implication of authentication. Central to the problem of authenticated key exchange are two issues: confidentiality and timeliness. To prevent compromise of session keys, essential identification and session keys information must be communicated in encrypted form, and this requires the prior existence of secret or a public keys that can be used for this purpose. The second issue, timeliness, is important because of the threat of message replies. Then next topic is replay attacks. A replay attack, also known as playback attack. A replay attack is a form of network attack and in which valid data transmission is maliciously or fraudulently repeated or delayed, and this is carried out either by the originator or by an adversary who intercepts the data and retransmits it, possibly as a part of spooling attack by IP packet substitution, and this is one of the lower tier versions of man in the middle attack. Replay attacks are usually passive in nature. Another way of describing such an attack is an attack or a security protocol using a replay of a messages from a different context into the intended. In replay attack, data has become very important to us in the recent times. Safety and security of the data is of paramount importance. There are several confidential and sensitive information which we cannot risk getting into wrong hands. However, sometimes an unauthorized person gets access to our information. Any action by an unauthorized person or a hacker which poses a threat on the integrity, confidentiality and authentication of data is called a security attack. What is a replay attack exactly? Replay attack is a type of security attack to the data sent over a network. In this attack, the hacker or any person with unauthorized access captures the traffic and sends communication to its original destination, acting as the original sender. The receiver feels that it is an authenticated message, but it is actually the message sent by the attacker. And the main feature of the replay attack is that the client would receive the message twice, hence the name is replay attack. There is one one point remaining in replay attack. Possible countermeasures include the use of sequence numbers. Generally, in practical sense, must be remembered last number used with every communicating party. Then timestamps need synchronized clocks amongst all parties involved, which can be problematic. And challenge or response using unique, random, unpredictable nonce, but not suitable for connectionless applications because of handshake overhead. Then next topic is one-way authentication. One application for which encryption is growing in popularity is electronic mail, that is email. The very nature of electronic mail and its chief benefit is that it is not necessary for the sender and receiver to be online at the same time. Instead, the email message is forwarded to the receiver's electronic mailbox where it is buffered until the receiver is available to read it. The envelope or a header of the email message must be in the clear so that the message can be handled by the store and forward email protocol, such as a simple mail transfer protocol (SMTP) protocol. However, it is often desirable that the mail handling protocol not require access to the plain text from of the message, because that would require trusting the mail handling mechanism. Accordingly, the email message should be encrypted such that the mail handling system is not in possession of the decryption key. A second requirement is that of authentication. Typically, the recipient wants some assurance that the message is from the sender. We have already presented public key encryption approaches that are suited to electronic mail, including the straightforward encryption of the entire message for confidentiality, authentication, or both these approaches require that either the sender know the recipient's public key means confidentiality or the recipient know the sender's public key means authentication or both confidentiality plus authentication. In any addition, the public key algorithm must be applied once or twice to what may be long messages. If confidentiality is the primary concern, then better to encrypt the message with a one-time secret key and also encrypt this one-time key with B's public. If authentication is a primary concern, then a digital signature may suffice but could be replaced by an opponent. To counter such a scheme, both the message and signature can be encrypted with the recipient's public key. The latter two schemes require that B knows A's public key and be convinced that it is timely and effective way to provide this assurance is the digital certificate. Next topic is using symmetric encryption. A two-level hierarchy of symmetric encryption keys can be used to provide confidentiality for communication in a distributed environment. Usually involves the use of a trusted key distribution center, that means KDC. Each party in the network shares a secret master key with the KDC, and the KDC is responsible for generating session keys and for distributing those keys to the parties involved in communication using the master keys to protect these session keys. Next topic is Kerberos authentication. Kerberos is a computer network authentication protocol that works on the basis of tickets to allow nodes communicating over a non-secure network to prove their identity to one another in a secure manner. The protocol was named after the character Kerberos from Greek mythology. Its designers aimed it primarily at a client-server model, and it provides mutual authentication. Both the user and the server verify each other's identity. Kerberos protocol messages are protected against eavesdropping and replay attacks. It's an authentication protocol and it works on a client-server model. Next, what is Kerberos? We already seen that Kerberos is a network authentication protocol and it is designed to provide strong authentication for client-server application by using the secret key cryptography. A free implementation of this protocol is available from the Massachusetts Institutes of Technology, means MIT. Kerberos is available in many commercial products as well. Many of the protocols used in the internet do not provide any security. Tools of snip password of the network are in common use by malicious hackers. Thus, applications which send an unencrypted password over the network are extremely vulnerable. Other client or server's application rely on the client program to be honest about the identity of the user who is using it. Other applications rely on the client to restrict its activities to those which it is allowed to do, with no other enforcement by the server. Kerberos is an authentication service developed as a part of the project Athena at MIT and is one of the best known and most widely implemented trusted third-party key distribution system. Kerberos provides a centralized authentication server whose function is to authenticate users to servers and servers to users. Unlike most other application schemes, Kerberos relies exclusively on symmetric encryption, making no use of public key encryption. Two versions of Kerberos are in common use, that is V4 and V5. Next is remote user authentication. We presented one approach to the use of public key encryption for the purpose of session key distribution. And the split protocol assumes that each of the two parties is in possession of the current public key of the other. It may not be practical to require this assumption. A protocol using timestamps is provided that uses a central system referred to as an authentication server, that means AS, because it is not actually responsible for a secret key distribution. Rather, the authentication server provides public key certificates. The session key is chosen and encrypted by A. Hence, there is no risk of exposure the uh, by the authentication server. The timestamps protect against replace of compromised key. See text of for details. And this protocol is compact but as before requires synchronization of clocks. Another approach proposed by Wu and Lam makes use of nonsense. Note the authors themselves spotted a flaw in it and submitted a revised version of the algorithm. In both these examples, the protocols described earlier, protocols that appeared secure were revised after additional analysis. These examples highlight the difficulty of getting things right in the area of authentication. Next topic is federated identity management process. Federated identity management process is an arrangement that can be made between multiple enterprises to let subscribers use the same identification data to obtain access to the networks of all the enterprises in the group. The use of such a system is sometimes called identity federation. Identity federation links a user's identity across multiple security domains, each supporting its own identity management system. When two domains are federated, the user can authenticate to one domain and then access resources in other domain without having to perform a separate login processes. In that we are seeing cross certification model. Cross certification enables entities in one public key infrastructures to trust entities in another public key infrastructure. This mutual trust relationship is typically supported by a cross certification agreement between the certification authorities, that means CS, in each public key infrastructures. The agreement establishes the responsibility and liability of each party. A mutual trust relationship between two certification authorities requires that each certification authority issue a certificate to the other to establish the relationship in both directions. The path of a trust is not hierarchical, although the separate public key infrastructures may be certificate hierarchies after two certification authorities have established and specified the terms of a trust and issued certificate to each other. Entities within the separate public key infrastructures can interact subject to the policies specified in the certificates. Then next is trusted third party model. In cryptography, a trusted third party is an entity which facilitates interactions between two parties who both trust the third party. The third party reviews all critical transaction communications between the parties based on the ease of creating fraudulent digital content. In trusted third party models, the relaying parties use this trust to secure their own interactions. Trusted third parties are common in any number of commercial transactions and in cryptographic digital transactions as well as cryptographic protocols. For example, a certificate authority means CA would issue a digital identity a certificate to one of the two parties. In the next example, the certificate authorities then becomes the trusted third party to that certificate insurance. Likewise, transactions that need a third party recordation would also need a third party repository service of some kind of or another. Trust, Trusted means that a system needs to be trusted to act in your interest, but it has the option to act against your interest. Trusted also means that there is no way to verify if that system is operating in your interest, hence the need to trust it. Next, federated identity management is a relatively new concept dealing with the use of common identity management scheme across multiple enterprises and numerous applications and supporting many thousands, even millions of users. Identity management is a centralized, automated approach to provide enterprise-wide access to resources by employees and other authorized individuals, defining an identity for each user, that means human or a process, associating attributes with the identity and enforcing a means by which a user can verify identity. Its principal elements are authentication, authorization, accounting, provisioning, then workflow automation, delegated administration, password synchronization, self-service password reset, and federation. We will see one by one. Authentication means confirming user corresponds to the username provided. Then authorization, granting access to services or resources given user authentication. Then accounting means process for logging access and authorization. Then provisioning means enrollment of users in the system. Then workflow automation means movement of data in a business process. Then delegated administration means in that use of role-based access control to grant permissions. Then password synchronization, creating a process for single sign-on or reduced sign-on. Self-service password reset enables users to modify their password, and federation process where authentication and permission will be passed on from one system to another, usually across multiple enterprises, reducing the number of authentication needed by the user. Kerberos contains a number of the elements of an identity management system. Now, the figure illustrates entities and data flows in a generic identity management architecture. A principal is an identity holder. Typically, this is a human user that seeks access to resources and services on the network. User devices, as agent processes, and server systems may also function as a principals. Principal Principals authenticate themselves to an identity provider. The identity provider associates authentication information with a principal as well as attributes and one or more identifiers. Increasingly, digital identities incorporate attributes other than simply an identifier and authentication information, such as passwords and biometric information. An attribute service manages the creation and maintenance of such attributes. For example, a user needs to provide a shipping address each time an order is placed at a new web merchant, and this information needs to be revised when the user moves. Identity management enables the user to provide this information once so that it is maintained in a single place and released to data consumers in accordance with authorization and privacy policies. Users may create some of the attributes to be associated with their digital identity, such as address. Administrators may also assign attributes to users such as roles, access permissions, and employee information. Data consumers are entities that obtain and employ data maintained and provided by identity and attribute providers, often to support authorization decisions and to collect audit information. For example, a database server or a file server is a data consumer that needs a client's credentials so as to know what access to provide to that client. Identity federation is in essence an extension of identity management to multiple security domains. Federated identity management refers to the agreements, standards, and technologies that enable the portability of identities, identity attributes, and entitlements across multiple enterprises and numerous applications, and supporting many thousands, even millions of users. Stalling figure illustrates entities and data flows in a generic federated identity management architecture. The identity provider acquires attribute information through dialogue and protocol exchanges with users and administrators. Identity management enables the user to provide this information once so that it is maintained in a single place and released to data consumers in accordance with authorization and privacy policies. Service providers are entities that obtain and employ data maintained and provided by identity providers, often to support authorization decisions and to collect audit information. A service provider can be in the same domain as the user and the identity provider. The power of this approach is for federated identity management, in which the service provider is in a different domain.